Hi, Lisa Slayback here. I'm just going to let you know I'm in my classroom, and if things are moving, it's just because I'm using my cart to make sure that I move things to one side and to the other so that you can see all the information I provided. I just want to make sure that when I'm discussing my research paper that I hit the key points that I think are most important for a summarized explanation for my research paper. So my research paper was on Christian patriots. I chose 4 men that demonstrated within their character, their actions, and their beliefs, being deeply devout, demonstrating strong love for Republican virtue. They were highly intelligent, and they were devoted to liberty, which led them to be strong patriots for America. My 4 gentlemen are Reverend John Weiss, Samuel Adams, Patrick Henry, and George Mason. And just to make sure I add this, according to our course guidelines, historians must be honest and objective in their research, and I certainly hope I tried my best to do that. The heritage of the founding of our country derived from men that were very devout in their faith, steadfast in their desire for liberty, and demonstrated durability in their camaraderie and alliances together. So with that being said, I'm going to present these 4 men and what I feel within my research of primary sources, their pamphlets, their articles, their speeches, their declarations, also using journal articles and then textbooks, but more, maybe a biography or a book on religion that included these 4 men. Reverend John Weiss, he was basically a leader within these leaders, in that John Weiss started this road to revolution with 2 very famous pamphlets. The first that I'm talking about is A Vindication of the Government of New England Churches. This is derived from an incident where some clergy within the Boston Ipswich area were trying to kind of consolidate and create a small council instead of having the people of the churches, self-rule. And he had a strong reaction, and within that reaction put a stop and a halt to anything trying to take away the freedoms of the people. I thought that was a really great moment because it demonstrates how that leads into then the next Christian patriot, but also very cool in that my students all hear about this when we teach Road to Revolution. Was he is coined to have been allegedly the first person or the first gentleman, reverend, to say taxation without representation leads to tyranny, and that was from 1689. His town of Ipswich, they have a plaque that says that they were the American Revolution started in 1689, led by Reverend John Weiss. He was for a very long time a reverend over the Ipswich parish. He was a man of full integrity, so smart, stood up to friends during the Salem witch trial when things were in quite a hysteria, and tried to calm the waters, and that was usually not the norm, because once you defended a so-called witch, they would come after you. But his integrity, his deep devotion to God, what was right, being a man of good character, he knew he needed to push forward and do the right thing. So in those moments, he is a Christian patriot. This leads us down to Sam Adams. Same area, New England area, Boston, Ipswich, not too far from each other. But Sam Adams has a moniker known as the father of the Revolution. He is a leader of the Sons of Liberty, the founder of the Committee of Correspondence. And what I really like the most is how these 2 came together. In 1772, the Sons of Liberty, to keep everyone in the city of Boston and the surrounding areas, on that path to, possible, citing and declaring independence, they reprinted the two pamphlets that John Weiss wrote, the first one being The Churches of Quarrel Espoused, and then the second one, A Vindication of Government of New England Churches. They reprinted them and distributed them out to the people of Boston and surrounding areas to keep them informed of that. Even in 1689, they were still needing to fight for liberty. It wasn't just in this one moment, in this one decade. I thought that was really great how, Reverend John Weiss kind of passed the baton on to Samuel Adams. I really liked the way the tie-in was. Samuel Adams, Congregationalist, strong Puritan, really believed in high morals. He, came from a wealthier family, but really lived in a humble, people, like to say, poor way. Adams worked to achieve three principal aims, and they are Republican virtue, liberty for all, and an upright society. Now, with that being said, you have to break up with the country or the parent that is holding you back and not giving you the freedoms that you deserve. This leads us over, and this is, Men of New England, and then this leads us over to our other Christian patriots, Patrick Henry and George Mason of Virginia. Patrick Henry, he is known as the Orator of Liberty. We know his most famous speech, Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death, but he was also a young, Virginia legislature in 1765 when the Stamp Act was coming in to fruition, and he gave a most poignant speech that really stirred the House of Burgesses and had a lot of people up in arms and calling for treason. And I'm going to read just what he said here. It says, Henry began to give a history lesson of Roman studies, pointing out that Caesar had his Brutus, Charles I his Cromwell, and George III. But before he could finish, shouts of treason, treason erupted from across the room. Many believed he was calling for the murder of King George III. But without hesitation, Henry finished his sentence with, may profit by their example. If this be treason, make the most of it. So like a Samuel Adams and a John Weiss, he saw what needed to be addressed regardless of the consequence to him, because he believed in Republican virtue. He was deeply, deeply devout in his faith. Samuel Davies was, a great influence not just biblically, but, when it came to oratorical skills as well. Highly intelligent and absolutely devoted to liberty. So he gives that speech in 1765. A decade later, we have the Intolerable Acts, especially the Port Bill Act, happening exclusively to Bostonians after the Boston Tea Party, and he gives his famous speech, Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death, that is well known and listened to, especially in my classroom, every single year. And as a whole, a strong, strong patriot. I don't think anyone could say that, patriotism and Patrick Henry would be opposites. I think that they are glued together, magnets. This leads us into, and what's really nice about this is that it blends into then George Mason, who doesn't get enough. In fact, these four men don't really get enough conversation, enough, I don't know what the word is right now, it's escaping me, but they don't get enough recognition. There it is. And I was happy to research them and give them the recognition deserved. George Mason, father of the Bill of Rights. It's a beautiful thing, but that Bill of Rights was basically in care of his Virginia Declaration of Rights from 1776 that many colonies basically copied or just used as a blueprint, as like, this is how it should be written and this is how we're going to add to it. all three men here, Reverend John Weiss had passed in 1725, but really, left a legacy and a mark, which is why Samuel Adams reprinted his work. But all these three men here were friendly with each other and really supportive. And what was really nice is even if they disagreed with each other legislatively, they still remained on good terms because they knew the bigger picture was love of country. First it would be, God, country, family, but the love of country and becoming a no longer, Englishman or no longer, Virginian, but American was the point. George Mason, when he wrote the Bill of Rights, or when he advocated for the Bill of Rights to the Constitution, he did so knowing that it was going to stir feathers because ideally when you're looking at the Constitution, it's a great framework for the country as a whole. Within states, you'd have your Declaration of Rights, which is what he had already written. But he felt so strongly about it that he refused to sign during the ratification process, sign off on the ratification, and it lost him his good friend, President George Washington. They were no longer friends after George Mason's refusal, but he stuck to his guns. He had strong integrity because he was also deeply devout, believed in Republican virtue, highly intelligent, and devoted to liberty, especially religious liberty. As a whole, these patriots absolutely demonstrated great character, great faith, and great love of country. And so I was honored to study about them and will use all the things that I know now within my classroom. Thank you for your time.